you'll never forget it.
RuPaul's Drag Race has been a fan favorite for years now, but most people have no idea that it's been hiding a secret dark side.
Ignorant people. It's the only thing I'm afraid of.
So let's break it all down and uncover the truth.
Feelings are not facts.
What are all the things the producers don't want you to know? Which contestants turned out to be terrible people? You'll never believe the truth about the show and about RuPaul himself. On the surface, RuPaul's Drag Race is all glamorous and polished, but once you take off that pretty top layer, there's a lot that's hiding underneath it, and none of it's pretty or polished. There's some shady stuff going on behind the scenes, and a lot of it is actually really serious business, and it's not isolated incidents either. Things just keep happening. Time and time again, there's yet another new contestant being exposed for doing something absolutely terrible. And a lot of the time, this kind of thing gets revealed years after the queen was on the show. So at that point, she's already been on Drag Race. There isn't really much RuPaul or the production can do about it in most of these cases, but one of the worst examples of a contestant getting exposed was actually not like that at all. This happened during the run of season 12. And if you've watched that season before, you probably already know exactly what I'm talking about. This contestant got exposed at the worst possible time for the show, and the things she got exposed for were definitely serious. I'm obviously talking about Sherry Pie. Back when season 12 was freshly announced, she was going to be one of the 13 queens competing on it, but it didn't take long before things started to come out about her. People had seen her in the promotional materials and recognized her instantly, and from there, they started coming forward with their stories. For years before that point, Sherry had been catfishing people on the internet, and you might be wondering what exactly that means, because catfishing can mean a lot of different things depending on the situation, but one way or another, it's always someone pretending to be someone they're not in a way that's harmful to others. But what Sherry did was actually extremely bad. She catfished young actors by pretending to be a producer, offering them a role. Now, these weren't famous actors with long lists of achievements and awards. They were only just starting out in the industry, and it's notoriously hard to build your career up from scratch as an actor. Sherry's victims were often desperate to get any role at all and willing to do a lot for it, and that's exactly how Sherry took advantage of them. She asked them to film casting videos and send them to her, and these weren't just any regular casting videos. What she asked for was pretty much just adult content, and the actors were definitely uncomfortable filming those videos for her, but they did it anyway because they believed it would get them a role in something, and they were willing to make sacrifices for that opportunity. Meanwhile, Sherry wasn't even a producer at all, and she definitely wasn't going to land them the role they were hoping to get from her. This is obviously extremely toxic and wrong behavior, and she didn't just do it to one person either. Multiple of her victims came forward with their experiences, and the thing is, it's not like this was something she used to do years before. Some of the catfishing instances actually happened just a couple of months ago at that point, and in a lot of the cases, what she did was also super illegal. And after all this came out, she actually came forward on Facebook and admitted to everything. So it was obviously a terrible look for Drag Race to give her any kind of platform, especially since she was actually going to make it all the way to the top 4. She even probably had a really good chance of winning the entire season. And obviously the producers of Drag Race had no idea what Sherry did in her spare time when they cast her. By the time the truth came out, the whole season had been filmed and edited, pretty much ready to go on the air, but the producers decided to do whatever they could. They actually edited Sherry out of the season and disqualified her from the competition, but she's definitely not the only problematic queen to have ever been on Drag Race. She's just the most obvious example because this was the only time someone actually got edited out of their season. But even on the same season, there was actually another queen who has done some pretty bad things. It's Whittle Von Du, who actually got arrested in 2021 for allegedly repeatedly getting physical with her partner. She was charged with DV and was going to appear in court before a judge, and it's not actually clear what kind of sentence she ended up getting, but Drag Race really seems to have a problem with problematic contestants. It's even some of the most prominent queens of the whole franchise who have been on multiple different seasons. If you follow Drag Race at all, you probably heard of Shangela. She competed on 3 different seasons of the show and is one of the most charismatic queens of the show's whole history. But early Earlier this year, she was accused of SA by someone she worked with back in 2020. She denied the allegations, but then a lot of stories about her started coming out from all over the place. Apparently, she's been touching her co-workers inappropriately for a long time. These allegations only came out a long time after Shangela was on Drag Race, but it really just makes you wonder how many more queens are actually extremely problematic. But the thing is, it's not even just the contestants that are the problem. RuPaul himself has done some pretty bad things too. The accusations against him are also really serious in a completely different way. Luckily, he's gotten better with this over time, but in the past, he said some pretty transphobic things, mainly about drag. The problem seems to be that RuPaul sees drag as only men dressing up as women, but the thing is, drag is an art form. It's all about self-expression. It's much more than just cis men pretending to be cis women. Drag isn't any less valid when it's a woman or a non-binary person doing it, but RuPaul clearly didn't used to think so. In a tweet one time, he implied that if a drag queen is a trans woman and transitions, she's basically cheating at drag. He compared transitioning to taking performance-enhancing substances, which was obviously very offensive. Luckily, he did delete the tweet and later apologized when people pointed that out, but there are also concerns that the way he runs Drag Race is transphobic too. For the longest time, there hadn't been any openly trans contestants on the show, at least not one who'd been openly trans before getting on the show. And that's not because there aren't any trans drag queens or because they just don't apply to Drag Race. There are plenty of trans drag queens out there, and there always have been, and they apply to Drag Race just as much as anyone else. After all, being on Drag Race is something that was considered the pinnacle of Drag Race for years. Now, the real reason there never used to be any trans queens on the show was because RuPaul just wouldn't pick them. But it looks like in recent years, RuPaul has been learning more about trans people, or he's at least been more careful about not saying transphobic stuff. But the show has always had a really narrow view of drag, even though the inclusivity has been improving over the years. Nowadays, the show doesn't seem as streamlined to just be about men dressing up as women anymore, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done before the show is completely inclusive. And even if you do get on the show, some queens have reported that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. First of all, the show really doesn't pay much unless you win. According to Elite Contract, queens only get about $400 per episode they're in, and that's not really that much considering they can't do any other work during that time. Plus, the queens usually spend huge amounts of money on their outfits for the show. For some, even the main prize money wouldn't actually be enough to pay for all of it. And then there are reports that even working with RuPaul isn't all that great either. According to Pearl from season 7, she went to tell RuPaul how big of a fan she was during a break in the filming, but RuPaul didn't respond in any normal, kind, or respectful way. He actually told Pearl to save this kind of thing for when the cameras are rolling. So you can imagine how disappointing that probably was for Pearl. According to her, it completely destroyed her spirit in the competition. After that incident, she wasn't really feeling the show anymore, and you can even tell that from her performance. But anyway, what do you guys think? Did you know about all these Drag Race controversies? Let me know in the comments below.